Part 4. 5. Getting it out in the open. Step 5. Making life energy visible. In Step 5, you make visible the results of the previous steps, plotting them on a graph that gives you a clear, simple picture of your financial situation, now and over time, and the transformation in your relationship with money, life energy. Your first month of tracking and evaluating your expenses will be revelatory as you realize how much money has flown your financial coop for no good reason. Confronting the reality of why and how you are slipping further and further into debt may be so uncomfortable you are tempted to stop. Fine little exercise. You think, but I've had all the insights I really need. If you persist, though tracking for another month, you may find dramatic reductions in your spending. A bit of consciousness goes a long way. If you wince at anything, no one is watching. Apply no shame, no blame, and keep going. Gold star. During month 3, big changes may happen again in either direction. You might save more. You might slack off because in month 2 you proved you could do it. Whether you give yourself a pat on the back or want to shut your eyes in the face of glaring truth, it might take some willpower to stay the course. How do you motivate yourself to keep going? Anyone who has undertaken any behavior change knows 3 keys. 1. Make it a habit rather than a choice. You do it whether you want to or not. You have a system and you follow the system and it drops into the background of daily life like brushing your teeth. 2. Be accountable to someone else. Make a commitment to one or more people that you will write down everything you spend and do your monthly accounting with your up and down arrows and zeros. You may meet your accountability partner monthly to share your results and have a money talk. You may text or call one another daily. You may give your accountability partner your password for your tracking app so they can check on you randomly, and you do that for them as well. Nosiness can be interesting and effective. 3. Chart. Checking off a daily to-do list or weighing yourself daily and posting your weight above the scale does wonders for your commitment to keep going. The same goes for money. Keeping track does wonders for quelling the urge to splurge. In Step 5, you will make a chart where you will post your income and expenses. You will also decide how to use it to keep yourself accountable, and will offer some suggestions for intensifying and therefore speeding up your journey to financial integrity. Fasten your seatbelts, making your wall chart. Step 5 entails setting up a graph of your income and your expenses, one that is large enough to accommodate 3 to 5 years of data. This graph will be simple to create, simple to maintain, and simple to interpret. All the information you need is already on your monthly tabulation. You don't need a computer or app to do Step 5. You just need to do it. If you have an app, online service, or accounting program you use for managing your money, graphs and charts will be built in and always up to date. But there is a second part of Step 5 that the computer won't do for you. To do it by hand, get a large sheet of graph paper, an 18 12-inch or 24 36-inch sheet with 10 squares per inch will do nicely from a business supply store or college bookstore. If you can't find one, never fear. You can use any large piece of paper and rule it yourself. The left-hand vertical axis represents money. On it, you will chart both your income and your expenses. Mark it in increments of dollars. Start with 0 at the bottom, leaving plenty of room on the upper part of the chart. As outrageous as this may sound at the moment, you should probably allow enough space at the top for your income to double. More than one fear has sheepishly shown us a chart with extra graph paper taped at the top to account for a level of earnings he or she never thought possible. Set up your scale so that the larger of the two figures, income or expenses for this month, falls about halfway up the scale. The lower horizontal scale represents time in increments of months. Allow 5 to 10 years on this axis. That's enough to see large-scale trends, maybe enough to see you through to financial independence. For those interested in doing this electronically, Excel or other spreadsheet software works well. If you know how to do this, it can open up a whole world of analyzing your finances, but it may not replace the shock or satisfaction of charting by hand. At the end of each month, you will plot the figures for your total monthly income and total monthly expenses. It is helpful to use one color for your income and another for your expenses. Connect each point with a line to the previous month's entry. That's all there is to it. When you do this step, the first month, you have a snapshot, very revealing, one of your habits around money. But the real learning and the real fun comes as you plot your figures month by month, year by year. Your wall chart will take the static snapshot of monthly tabulations and add the dynamic dimension of time, making vivid your movement toward the goal and your progress over time. Your graph will also move you renewing your commitment to keep going. The initial purge and splurge cycle. In the first month of recording your figures, you might confront one of our national foibles. Your income entry may well be lower than your expenses entry. You may have spent more than you earned. It is, after all, the American way. Seeing this reality might come as a bit of a shock. Chances are you'll want things to change and change now. Accustomed to budgets, diets, and New Year's resolutions, you swear on a stack of bank statements and credit cards that next month will be better. This is when people often go on a wallet fast with overrich zeal. They scrimp, they save, they deprive themselves and their families, putting everyone on beans, rice, and oatmeal rations. They concentrate daily on that expenses line, determined to cut it in half in one short month. Amazingly enough, many do. Entering the expense figure the second month, they proudly note a steep decline. This kind of austerity, however, isn't sustainable. By the third month, expenses often rebound with a vengeance, making up for the second month. Deprivation, now what? In the old way of thinking, you might be tempted to take up the burden of budgeting again, or to quit, but take heart. There is a better way, and it works. Elaine H., the computer programmer we met in who hated her job but couldn't find a way out, had no trouble setting up her wall chart. Numbers and tracking were her business, while she had acquired many trophies to prove her success. Her wall chart looked no different from those of many other American dreamers. Her expenses were higher than her income. What I saw truly shocked me. I had no idea I spent more than I earned. But there it was. Income $4,400 for that month, and expenses $4,770. She felt challenged. If the odds were against spending less than you earn, she wanted to beat the odds. She decided to experiment on ways to lower her expenses, rather than going out to lunch with her coworkers or even ordering less expensive meals. She brought her lunch from home. For a month, she bought no new clothes or dinners out. After all, you can endure anything for a month. Lo and behold, by month 2 her expenses had dropped way below her income. She'd proved she could do it. I was elated. The next month I paid less attention, returning to my old shopping habits and wiping out much of the financial gain of the previous month. My wall chart looked bad, and she realized that instead of trying to change the chart, she would need to change herself. How did this change in spending happen? Elaine explains that as she followed the steps of the program and noted her successes, her self-esteem rose. She saw that she could do it, and her dissatisfaction turned into a drive to do the best job she could. This spirit transformed her experience of working, surprising her as much as it surprised her supervisors. Within 4 months, I was debt-free, and my expenses were down to $1,640. I had cut my grocery bill from $359 a month to $203 without even trying. Perhaps part of it was that I was happier on my job, so I needed fewer treats. My restaurant bill dropped to $77 a month from $232, just by eating out only when I really wanted to. I moved to a house for less rent that was closer to work, so my gas bill was 60% lower. My medical costs were also cut in half, most likely for the same reason my food bill went down. I was enjoying my job more and had no need to get sick. None of this felt like deprivation. I wasn't struggling to spend less. It didn't even feel like I was doing anything in particular. It all happened gradually. Through the years, she'd spent thousands of dollars on seminars that were designed to change everything from her self-esteem to her effectiveness on the job, but the change never lasted. So what was different this time? A major component was the wall chart. The wall chart seemed to be a challenge to the way she was living her whole life. It drew a picture of her spending habits, graphically showing her why there was not enough money at the end of the month. The wall chart reminds us that transforming our relationship with money doesn't happen in a blaze of insight. You need to do the steps faithfully, and that takes time and patience. Impatience, denial, and greed are actually part of what is being transformed. It takes time to reflect on our lives and see if we still want to go where we're headed. Reading this book may take only a few days, but transforming your relationship with money will happen over time by observing your reactions to your wall chart instead of getting upset about it. You will be clearing away the attitudes and beliefs that got you where you are today. There are 2 keys to making this process work for you. 1. Start. 2. Keep going. We often hear that the journey of 1,000 miles begins with a single step. What we don't hear as often is that you arrive at your destination by hundreds of thousands of additional small steps forward. Keep taking those steps. Eventually, you'll begin to experience the magic of this process. Without even trying, you'll find your expense line heading down. How the 3 questions can save you money. Remember those 3 questions in step 4. You will be finding out the profound effect these questions have on your consciousness about money and, consequently, on your wall chart. Automatic lowering of expenses. Question 1 is, did I receive fulfillment, satisfaction, and value in proportion to life energy spent? Asking this question every month about each of your spending categories increases your consciousness about your choices, and thus results in an automatic reduction in your total monthly expenses, giving you the pleasure of seeing the expenses line on your chart go down. As we saw in greater consciousness about which expenditures actually bring us happiness and which do not, activates our survival mechanism. In fact, you are reprogramming yourself. Each of your marks are an affront to your survival instinct, that automatic movement toward pleasure and away from pain. This powerful mechanism becomes an ally as you become aware that some expenditures that you thought brought pleasure, or that you simply incurred out of habit, are actually not fulfilling or pleasurable at all. Remember our Gazinga's pins. you will soon know what yours are. Those blinding moments of awareness as you catch yourself about to spend your life energy on yet another Gazingas pin will all add up to lower expenses. Let's see how this works. In the past, when you tried to change your habits and thus increase your experience of satisfaction, you didn't have an accurate overview of your spending patterns. Rather than identifying Gazingas pin purchases as a source of dissatisfaction, you continued to think it was the one thing to hang on to. Sometimes you might have tried to give up Gazingas pins as a painful penance for your spendthrift ways, only to find yourself once again at the Gazingas pin, counter-thinking just this once. But now you have identified those dead ends and are looking down from above the money maze. You have seen the light. I am not getting fulfillment, in reality, from this expenditure of life energy. You will feel as if you are waking up. Wait, you blurt, eyes wide open now. I haven't read half the books in my library or made a quilt in a decade. Enough. That little moment of awareness makes a big difference. Now that you've solidified the link between how you spend your money and how much fulfillment you get, your Gazingas pins no longer retain their old grip on you. Now you can be in line with yourself. You're neither fighting yourself nor trying to buy happiness and satisfaction. On the contrary, you're now getting fulfillment from other uses of your life energy. You are valuing your life energy and thus yourself. From this perspective, it is easy to change direction. Ivy, you had grown up poor, the daughter of Mexican-American parents. There was never enough money, but rather than acknowledge and talk about the pain of poverty, her parents gave her platitudes. We are blessed, her Catholic father would say, because only the poor can enter the kingdom of heaven. Religion, poverty, and frustration at counting pennies got all tangled up, leaving Ivy confused and resentful. She resolved that when she grew up, she'd have enough money so that she'd never have to worry about watching her spending and would be able to buy whatever she wanted. Ivy easily identified her Gazingas pin clothes. In doing her inventory in step 1, she breezed through her home, satisfied with her simplicity, until she came to her closet. Where did all these clothes come from? Of course, they came from a variety of stores, most of them expensive department stores. But why? Her determination to never again be poor had turned into the need to always be perfectly dressed. She could measure her distance from poverty by the number of daily compliments on her attire. Yes, as a career professional, she did need to look her best, but for Ivy that had been translated into several new outfits every month. If she even wore last month's blouse with this month's new suit, she felt shabby. In doing her monthly tabulations, she quickly saw that she did not get fulfillment commensurate with the hours of life energy she put into keeping several department stores in the black. With no struggle, denial, or deprivation, she stopped buying clothes she didn't need. To her amazement, the number of compliments she received per day didn't decrease at all. Hal N., an activist turned financial planner, found that his unconscious spending categories weren't just Gazingas pins. You would have to call them mega Gazingas pins or simply major spending blind spots. The fee course, for him, was more like cataract surgery than simply getting a new pair of glasses. When he asked himself the questions about fulfillment and alignment, he realized how bored and tired he'd been for the past 8 years. He also saw clearly what had gotten him into trouble. First of all, to play the role of financial planner, he had assumed he needed an expensive office. But when he looked at the amount of life energy his office was costing him $2,900 per month, he questioned whether he was really getting value. In fact, he wasn't. He did most of his business on the phone, through the mail, or in clients. Homes nobody ever saw him in his office, so he moved his office to his home. Total current office cost $750 per month. The second biggest blind spot for Hal had been his kids. They lived with their mother, but he provided well for their support. That was no problem. The problem was that he gave his kids extra money every time they asked, because he felt guilty about not being with them. He has 9 children, so that, added up, no matter how much he gave, they always wanted more. Having had his street smarts sharpened by this process of honest evaluation, Hal recognized that his kids had become addicted, and he was the enabler. He decided to change, and even though the children are now going through a form of withdrawal, Hal is satisfied with his choice to stop paying guilt money for being an absent father, with a few other minor adjustments, asking the 3 questions cut 50% off Hal's expenses, and he is a lot happier for it. Not everyone has the amount of padding that Hal did, but after looking at hundreds of Fear's wall charts, we can say that those who get past the 3-month hump will find their expenses drop naturally and painlessly by about 20%. These people report no feelings of deprivation, no struggling to keep to a budget, just a natural decline, knowing that you are not getting satisfaction proportional to the expenditure of life energy in a given subcategory of spending, generates an automatic, self-protective reversal of your spending habits. Over time, you actually find yourself feeling better by not spending. Not buying a Gazingas pin now becomes a source of fulfillment because you yourself have determined that Gazingas pins don't bring you fulfillment, alignment, and personal integration. There is still more to look forward to as you work with your wall chart. Watch that expense line go down simply by asking question to each month: is this expenditure of life energy in alignment with my values and life purpose? This is a feedback system for integrity. Your statement of your values and life purpose reflects your highest vision, what you truly want for yourself. Thus, you will want to act in your day-to-day life in a way consistent with your values and purpose. Unfortunately, however, it is sometimes all too easy to overlook the reality of what you're actually doing. It is possible to behave in ways that are not only unsupportive of but contradictory to your highest vision and mentioning to be unaware of it. Worse yet, sometimes conflicts between whims and higher purpose are resolved by swiftly silencing the voice of conscience. The Bible, Romans 7:19, puts a sharp point on this all-too-human habit. I want to do what is good, but I don't. I don't want to do what is wrong, but I do it anyway. The data on how you spend your life energy provides a nitty-gritty, tangible measure of that integrity, which is an invaluable support in keeping your material life in line with your ideals and goals. When your spending and your goals are in alignment, you have an experience of wholeness and integrity. You feel good about yourself. When they are not aligned, when the answer to the question, does this expenditure support my values and life purpose, is a resounding no, then the experience is more likely to be one of disappointment or skepticism. Often expenses will go down with this question because so many unconscious expenses are simply emotional or cultural programs playing themselves out through your wallet. But not always. With a focus on that Goldilocks just rightness for each category, you may find you've been stingy with yourself and need to spend more. Perhaps you once dreamed of being an opera singer. Where are singing lessons if anywhere in your categories? Do you need to move to Italy to study with the best? Perhaps you choose to pour more money into training your voice while developing a long-term plan for how that training may pay off in income. On the other hand, you may decide that you can join the volunteer light opera company in your city, get coaching for free from the director, and be happier staying home among friends. The subtle but effective process of reinforcement, spend money on X equals feel good, spend money on Y equals feel bad, actually works. It serves to break robotic spending patterns, the simple recognition that you're not experiencing alignment from a given spending category acts to realign your responses to the stimuli in that category. You will automatically begin to spend less on those things that don't support your values and life purpose. And you will feel better about yourself, knowing that increasingly you are putting your money where your life purpose is, integrating your material life with your inner awareness. This integration is at the heart of financial integrity. As far as she could tell, Elaine H. didn't have a purpose in life. She just wanted to make it through, seeking pleasure and avoiding pain as best she could. Thinking back on her childhood, she remembered that her only happiness had been wandering off in the woods when her family took trips to the country. When she started the FEE program, she was the only one of her siblings who had gotten ahead. One was a recluse living on welfare, another had committed suicide, and the third lived on the streets. Having a high-paying job, a sports car, and a nice house made her look like a winner to herself and to her family. The question about aligning her spending with her values shook her. Complacency, having always measured herself by externals, Elaine started covertly checking out her friends and co-workers. Did they have a higher purpose? One of the people in her office was one of those save the world types. Intrigued by someone who didn't measure her own net worth by material possessions, Elaine cultivated a friendship with her. Soon both of them were attending meetings of a local peace group. The people Elaine met, they were all questioning how they could better live their values and what actions they could take in the world to express their sense of purpose. These meetings became her chief form of entertainment. Instead of expensive workshops or outings to all the latest movies, she attended lectures and participated in fundraising phone-ons. She found a large park near her home and spent hours on weekends wandering in the woods, and at charting time her expense line kept going down. From a monthly outlay of more than $4,500, her cost of living dropped to a steady $900 to $1,200 per month. Looking for her purpose in life turned out to be a key component in the change she was undergoing. Asking the third question, how might this expenditure change if I didn't have to work for money, can further affect your expense line, since people often find that more expenses go down post-financial independence. They sometimes draw a faint line that floats below the current expense line as an estimation of their post-job lifestyle. Maybe the mortgage or rent is gone because you live in a motorhome or travel in less expensive countries. Maybe restaurant meals disappear. This question also whets your appetite for that free life, and you want to speed the process up so you can get there sooner, so you consciously save more. If you've chosen to ask the fourth question, what would this expense look like in a just and compassionate world? There's no telling what will happen. What are unusual months? Yes, there will be unusual months when your expenses line takes an alarming leap upward. The insurance payment is due. You have an unexpected repair expense. April comes and goes with the annual bloodletting known as taxes. How do you handle these? For one thing, you may recognize that every month is an unusual month. You learn to take unusual expenses in stride and to pay for them with cash, instead of hiding them under a blanket of plastic. 1 month's tax payment is another month's insurance payment is another month's doctor bill. Another strategy would be to prorate annual expenses over the whole 12 months. For example, if your auto insurance bill is $841 per year, you might, in addition to questioning whether a car is worth it, choose to divide that by 12 and make it a monthly expense. Ditto with health insurance, income tax, payments, property taxes, and so on. There is no right way to do the accounting. You need to choose the way that gives you the information you need, so that as you glance at your wall chart, you know where you are and where you're going. Getting your finances out in the open. Now that charting has become a habit, even a pleasurable one, as you see your progress, you can add the element of accountability. How? Open the subject with friends via a money talk. By raising the emphasis, you're letting your friends know you are a safe listening ear for them to risk. Talking about money, you aren't setting yourself up as an advisor, coach, or expert. You're signaling that you are open and interested and on your own transformational journey. At the same time, you are inviting others to hold you accountable simply because you're the friend who's getting his or her money act together, which will really make you want to get your money act together. Hundreds of people have started blogs about their journeys to financial independence, in which they dialogue with their readers. Many post their monthly accounting and tax returns. Posting your monthly accounting on a blog. Yes, this is another accountability technique. In Joe Dominguez's seminars and in earlier editions of this book, we suggested hanging your wall chart in a prominent place where you will see it every day. To do you the most good, the chart must be visible so that it can inspire you often to stay on track. Some people start out with their chart in the closet, literally. They hang their chart on the inside of their closet door. It keeps their financial affairs private, while still providing a reminder every day as they dress for work that they want to be conscious in their handling of money. For those opting for financial independence, it reinforces the awareness that work is no longer about another day, another dollar, but is rather about drawing one day closer to their goal of freedom from financial fears and fiscal failures. It's a boost, as good as a cup of coffee or a hug. Ivy Yu, who never wanted to be poor, met her Prince Charming, and so, as they say in fairy tales, it came to pass that she had a successful life husband, 2 sons, built toward a dream house with 3 decks, to patios, and furniture selected by an interior designer, and no need to balance her checkbook. Then reality intervened. The fantasies on which she'd built her life weren't strong enough to maintain her marriage, her sanity, so she said goodbye to her husband, her house, her furniture, and her high-stress job, packed a few select possessions into a U-Haul, and headed west with her sons. 7 years later, through the fee course, she found a path to even greater freedom. She and her friend Margaret P. invited a group of 20 friends to take the course so that they could support one another in following the program. They met every month, sharing insights, successes, and roadblocks, and the intimate details of their financial lives. When Ivy did her chart, she challenged herself to bring it to the group, and some of her ancient fears reappeared. Her first thought was, my parents would think I'm crazy. You don't show people how much you earn and spend. It's not in good taste. It's what was that reluctance? Why was she afraid of exposing her finances? The reason, she realized, was a fear that it would allow people to judge her and decide whether she was a person of worth. They could sum her up with a few numbers and discard her if she fell short. with the same resolve that had helped her to leave her marriage. She took her chart to the group. The fear melted, and something inside her relaxed about money. What she spent was just what she spent. Her income was just her income. She could tell it to someone as easily as she could tell someone the color of her living room couch. It was no big deal. Over time, you may find that your feelings about your chart change as a reflection of changes in your relationship with money. The chart becomes a representation of how well you are living your values, something that reflects the care you are taking with every decision about your material world. It becomes a source of pride, not arrogance, but that kind of deep satisfaction that comes with integrity. Once this happens, many people find that they feel so good about their progress that they bring their chart out of the closet and hang it on a wall. Stop a minute and reflect on your own feelings about your current relationship with money. How would you feel about hanging this graphic representation of your financial affairs on your living room wall, right out where everyone who comes into your house could see it? Would you feel at ease? Uneasy? The degree of your discomfort is a measure of the degree of your financial disease. Don't worry. That uneasiness will disappear as you follow the steps of this program. Financial independence as a byproduct of doing the steps. People who put the steps of this program into practice report that the process of transforming their relationship with money becomes both challenging and fascinating. Recording every penny becomes an enjoyable ritual at the checkout counter, and it also sparks some interesting money talks with people who want to know what you're up to in a grocery line or around a table somewhere. Monthly tabulation time is a highlight. Asking the 3 questions provides a quick yet penetrating check-in with your values and life purpose. Entering income and expenses on the wall chart becomes a time to reflect on the truth of your consciousness around money. After a few months or a year of following these steps, you will begin to notice a stunningly satisfying byproduct of the process. As you consistently earn more than you spend, you eventually get out of debt and accumulate savings. Does some of this seem impossible, considering your particular financial situation? It's not the conditions of your life, but how you interact with them that will allow you to move forward. Followers of this program include people who were deeply in debt and out of work, who didn't have a college education and had huge gaps in their resumes, who had families to support and who lived in depressed parts of the country. They didn't have the wind at their backs. They just made skillful use of the winds they encountered and sailed with them. In the strictest sense, financial independence, as we have defined it, means having a choice of what you do with your time because you have an income sufficient for your basic needs and comforts from a source other than paid employment. But there are other aspects of fee, such as getting out of debt and accumulating savings. Financial independence is getting out of debt. For many people, debt is a heavy millstone, and getting out of debt is a tremendous milestone. Often, they don't even realize what a burden debt is until it disappears. What about you? Are you in debt? Do you know how much you owe, and to whom do you know how much it's costing you to be in debt? Or do you just make payments on your mortgage, your cars and your credit cards till death do you part? Many students march out of college with an expensive piece of paper and tens of thousands of dollars in student loans. For those lucky enough to land a job offer, they feel like they've made it. Soon comes a brand new car to showcase their long-awaited graduation, and with it another pile of debt. But, hey, what's another $20,000 when I have a full-time job? Little do they realize how much further this pushes them back from the starting line. People who see debt as endless and just pay down as little as possible are, in effect, lowering their income. They don't see that using a high-interest credit card to buy a new stereo to celebrate a raise can wipe out the gain in salary, and then some. A car financed with a multi-year loan will ultimately cost quite a bit more than the original sticker price. A house with a 30-year mortgage will cost, depending on the interest rate, 2 or even 3 times the purchase price by the time the final payment is made. Numerous studies suggest that people spend more when they use credit cards instead of cash. To Dave Ramsey, famous for helping people get out of debt, is a major advocate of eliminating credit cards from your life altogether. The rise of easy credit makes it far easier to opt for instant gratification, especially with online shopping. Every transaction we make is simply represented as pixels on a screen. We are no longer limited to what we can afford based on what we have already earned. We can now buy based on what we hope to earn in the future. Debt has become the American way, making it hard to see that it is debt that chains us to our jobs. It's debt that keeps us with our noses to the grindstone, making a dime to pay off pleasures we've long forgotten and luxuries we scarcely have time to enjoy. Tanya N. used to subtitle her life bombs by day, peace by night. She worked for money as a graphic designer for a high-tech company with major defense contracts, and worked for love on a variety of sponsored service projects. Thanks to her $26,000 debt, there seemed to be no alternative. And because she had been told repeatedly that there was no other way, her conscience had stopped bothering her. The fee program provided a merciless mirror, but it freed her. On her chart, she placed a small sign that read, "On my way to debt-free." Below it, she put a series of Velcro patches with numbers and kept track of the exact amount she owed. It was as if I were melting a candle or losing 100 pounds. She told us, without a raise and without any feeling of deprivation, she was debt-free in 2 years. When she looked for what was really fulfilling in her life, she saw that her greatest joy came from short-term work trips she'd participated in, helping with construction jobs in places like Costa Rica and Kenya. Upon returning from her first trip to Kenya, she had become extremely depressed. Yes, she'd helped build an addition to a rural hospital in a remote mountain village, but now what? She was still rich while they were poor. So she started collecting medical supplies that would otherwise be discarded and packed them off to Kenya with safari-bound tourists. By the time she was debt-free, Tanya knew just what her next step would be. She had discovered that people in Kenya were dying from untreated tooth abscesses. She quit her job, rented out her townhouse, leased her car, and left for Kenya for a year to help establish a dental clinic, with no debts and with the rent on her house and car providing all the cash she needed to live in rural Kenya. Tanya was financially liberated. Being debt-free, she now had a choice, and she chose to follow her heart. Getting out of debt, then, is one form of financial independence. Retiring. Your debt returns to you the freedom to choose, whatever the economic climate. Being able to say, "I don't owe anything to anyone," is a statement of sanity, dignity, and freedom. Once you're out of debt, you have choices. It's very empowering to realize that every dollar of every paycheck is your own. You might choose, as Tanya did, to follow your heart to distant lands or different pursuits. Then again, you might continue to enjoy the process of transforming your relationship with money right where you are, as you continue to spend less than you earn while savoring life to the fullest. An ever larger gap will develop on your wall chart between your income line and your expenses line. This gap has a name, one that has fallen into disuse in recent years. It's called savings, are another form of financial independence. Becoming a super saver. How much are you saving now? Are you still going into debt? Digging out of debt? Spending everything you earn? Your savings rate is one of the most important factors for achieving financial independence. Think about savings rate in this way. If you spend 100% of your paycheck, you will never retire. If you spend 0% of your paycheck each month, then congrats. You are already financially independent and no longer need to work for money. But what about all those percentages in between? As we said, on average, people who do the steps lower their expenses by 20%, and many don't even remember what they used to spend their money on. Once you see this transformation on your wall chart, the light bulb goes on. The more you save, the sooner you are free. Saving more becomes like a game. For example, you discover from your grocery category that meat every meal is your biggest daily drain. So you have your portions, or the number of times a week you eat it. One financial blogger decided to not buy any new clothes for a year and found it easy. Living alone might look like a luxury you no longer want, given that adding a roommate to your house now might lasso your retirement date and pull it 4 years closer. Plus, it might shave off some unattractive habits from your life: grumpiness in the morning or dishes in the sink. Such adjustments tend to stick. You actually change your habits. We once heard an advocate for the homeless say that most Americans are 2 paychecks away from homelessness. That seemed excessive, almost beyond belief. Yet when we talked with other professionals who have their fingers on the pulse of consumer debt, some have said that 2 paychecks is a conservative estimate. 1 paycheck or 1 major illness would be enough to send many people over the edge. A 2015 U.S. Federal Reserve Board report found that 47% of Americans would have to borrow money or sell something to cover a $400 emergency expense. How can one of the richest nations to ever exist have so many of its citizens barely making ends meet? With savings, unemployment is not a tragedy. If you lose your paycheck but have savings, you need not lose any of your possessions. What's more, you may see the opportunity to explore options you were too busy or too tired to consider before. You could pack up the family in a camper and travel around the country. You could strap on a backpack and tours the world. You could read, you could do every household project on your list. You could learn a new trade. You could explore your creative side, painting pictures or making music for the sheer pleasure of it. You could spend the whole year in a systematic job search for the work that suits you to a T. You could get your GED, BA or MA and qualify for a whole new level in your chosen field of work. You could volunteer full-time for a cause you care about, and maybe even be asked to stay on as paid staff. You could get reacquainted with your family. Try this. Ask yourself how you would spend your time if you could take a year off with pay. Don't be surprised if you find your mind a total blank. Complete identification with your job may have temporarily suppressed your true dreams and desires. But stay with the question and discover the possibilities of what you would choose to do if you had enough savings that you didn't need. Paid employment for 1 year. How do you feel about having savings? What are your thoughts about it for or against? Are you postponing it, thinking you'll do it later, or when you've paid off your debt, or when you have a better job? Does having savings compromise your self-image? Does it represent the passage of your youth or capitulation to your parents? Is it something that you'll get around to one day? Are you a spendthrift who thinks the term disposable income means you get to spend every last penny in your pocket. Does savings seem like an impossible dream, given your current financial status? What about your religious or political convictions about saving money? Should you be tithing your excess money to the church, giving it to the poor, or donating it to a cause? The point here is not necessarily to change your savings habits, but to get in touch with your predisposition about savings so that you'll be able to manage with ease and integrity the increase in savings that comes as a byproduct of doing these steps. Later on, we'll talk about how to give these savings a life of their own. If you put your savings in a CD or a debt instrument like a US Treasury, corporate or municipal bond with an AA or better rating, or any matching fund option at your work, and you don't touch it, it will, all by itself, make you money through the magic of compound interest, which we explain in the Sooner You Start, the more you'll have. It's as simple as that. This is why parents establish savings accounts for their children at young ages. While your savings percentage will change with time, the intentional act of allocating something to a savings account or safe investment is the same as saving money on a consumer purchase through smart shopping. In both cases, you get more for less. Savings, then, are a form of financial independence. Savings can give you new courage at your job and new energy to explore the neglected parts of your life. Savings pave over the lean times in freelance or seasonal work. Savings relax any unconscious fear of homelessness. Savings keep you from making bad choices out of desperation. Saving money also builds the potential for freedom from future emergencies, from being in debt, and from working 9 to 5 until 65. Saving money is like building a dam on a river. The water that builds up behind the dam has an increasing amount of potential energy. Allow your life, energy, money to accumulate in a bank account, and you will be ready to power anything from painting your house to reorienting your life. All this from a graph. There is nothing magical about the wall chart. You can enter your numbers at the beginning of the month and ignore it the rest of the month, and nothing will happen. But if you interact with it, keep it in plain sight, listen to what it's telling you, and keep going, you will notice changes over time. Part of financial intelligence is the continuing awareness of your earning, spending, and saving patterns over time. It is a constant reminder of your commitment to transform your relationship with money. It counters the out of sight, out of mind syndrome. It keeps you aware of your intention to change your unconscious spending habits. It is a feedback system showing you at a glance, clearly and graphically, your current status and your progress toward your goal. You don't have to haul out your piggy bank or your monthly tabulations to see how you're doing. The two lines on your graph are either going up or going down. It can be an inspiration, an experience of satisfaction with the progress you're making that spurs you to even greater heights when you are down in the weeds of daily life. A glance at the wall chart can remind you of the beautiful life you are seeding. It can be a motivation, a prod to keep you on track when discouragement creeps in or your energy flags. When temptation strikes, the thought of facing your wall chart at the end of the month might help you make a healthier choice. It puts your integrity on the line visibly. It is hard, or at least harder, to lie to yourself about your progress in the presence of your wall chart. It is a continuing suggestion that you honor your life energy. Your income represents many hours of your precious tenure on this beautiful earth, and your expenses represent ways you've chosen to use those valuable hours. The wall chart reminds you to steward this resource of time as well as possible. It can stimulate your interest in personal finance, a skill you can improve through reading books, listening to podcasts, taking courses, and talking with friends who actually know more than you do. Finally, it enlists continuing support by having it on the wall where others can see it. You're inviting interest and participation. It helps to have your friends and relatives cheering on the sidelines. Think about the money talks you'll have. Final inspiration from Linda and Mike Lennick. Linda and Mike Lennick started the 9-Step program in July 1992, soon after they heard about it on the radio. At that time, they were $52,000 in debt, car loan and mortgage. By July 1993, simply by following the steps, including the supercharged motivation that came from their wall chart, they were debt-free. But this isn't the total story. If you look at their chart, you'll see they traced their debt back to 1986, when it was at $75,000 plus. That was when they were following a surefire make a million beat the market stock and commodities scheme that plunged them for a while in up to $125,000 of debt. Part of Mike's love of your money or your life was that this program worked because they became aware, committed, and conscious. He never, again, wanted to experience the gut-wrenching, face-blanching panic that struck when the surefire scheme precipitously failed. Taking the slow and steady route, they still achieved fee many years ago. Linda has dedicated much of her time since to her great love, quilt making. Mike cultivated his guitar playing and even now makes some side money, playing gigs in clubs. For many years, he also led groups applying the steps of the program to their lives, and even now uses his money smarts to help older people manage their retirement savings. Summary of Step 5. Make and keep up to date a chart of your total monthly income and your total monthly expenses. Look at it often. Share it with others. Money talk, questions. Social support is a key to behavior change. It keeps you inspired and accountable. Using the suggestions in the epilogue for how to have a money talk, raise these questions in your daily reflections with your partner or in social groups. Remember, adding why to the end of any question will take it deeper. Adding how has society shaped my answer to any question will take it wider. There are no right answers. How much money do you need to be happy? What or who can help you change your relationship with money? What might change if you could know what others are? Friend, date, boss, stranger rune. What motivates you to save? What helps you save money?